Since 1954, Terrebonne General has been a beacon of health and hope in our community. As we mark 7 decades of dedication to your well-being, Terrebonne General Health System remains committed to advancing healthcare, improving lives, and expanding our services to meet your evolving needs. In celebrating our past, we look forward to a future filled with promise and progress. Your health is our legacy. To discover more, visit tghealthsystem.com.
All right, welcome back. We have the first lieutenant of the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Department, Blake Tabor. He is on the desk right now. We're going to talk about scams. We had a few of those when we were growing up, and a lot of the same ones when we were growing up. People now, they're getting smart. They must get in a think room and come up with stuff, and because it's different.
Absolutely. And look, we've talked about this before, especially, we saw a big wave several years ago about the elderly being specifically attacked with these scams. Mm-hmm. We featured even a few on here, about hungry children. We know what people of our older generations feel about hungry children. They're going to attack at the heartstrings. And nowadays it seems like these scams are predicated on fear. And, unfortunately, this go around, it's law enforcement, and it's that eliciting that fear of people having outstanding arrest warrants and different things. So that's what they're attacking here most recently.
We've seen so many scams through hurricanes.
Absolutely.
And I guess y'all, as a sheriff's department, have to always be sort of fluid, because you're going to get it. Normally, I bet you it's somebody from the general public that calls you and said, I was called. And we get the calls over here at HTV, and I'm going, God, that was pretty shrewd. Mm-hmm. But they think it. So I guess you'll rely on the public to get y'all that information.
Absolutely. And look, and I'll give you a prime example. Had some storm damage to my personal home, right? Contacted the insurance company today, as a matter of fact. Spoke to my agent. They enlisted the assistance of an adjuster. Couple hours later, I'm getting a call from an adjuster that was not linked to my insurance company. How do they get this information? Right. That information is on the dark web, unfortunately. And, no one is free of this. I mean, even me as a law enforcement officer, my information has gotten on the dark web, and they don't care. These scammers do not care what you do for a living. They're going to attack. Now, luckily, when you identify yourself as a law enforcement officer, I get a lot of hang-ups real quick.
Click.
But and that's a tactic we tell people to use. Mm-hmm. When you're getting an overabundance of calls, hey, I'm a police officer, and you're probably going to get a lot of hang-ups. But it's about educating yourself on what is a scam and what is not a scam, and how to combat that, because these scammers are a lot of, silver-tongued devils. They're going to talk you into a lot of things, and we've seen it happen over and over again.
And the more you question them, isn't there? Or some people actually have told me that they have fun with the scammers, but I always tell them, you may not want to spend 5 or 6 minutes on the phone with the scammer. You never know what they're calculating on the end of your cell phone or whatever, but some people, it's a sport to fight back at them. I guess we've gotten used to that, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think people are coming up with all kind of new and inventive ways to kind of deal with this, but it's about going back to the root of the problem, right? It's about making sure that you're vigilant in these phone calls, and we tell everyone the first thing to do is to just hang up the phone. If you can't talk to anyone, you can't send money, right? And before you know it, before they talk, they start pulling at your heartstrings, or they start, eliciting that fear in you, and you're willing to do things that you're not normally willing to do. So it's about following the tips and tricks that law enforcement provide, and just making sure that you're vigilant and hanging up the phone and not sending money. The latest scam is that there are people that are posing as sheriff's deputies, and that's not anything that's utterly common or uncommon. But what is uncommon is that, or is common now, is that they're using names of sheriff's deputies specifically, right? And so we're not going to reveal those names, but they're naming and identifying people that work in our agency. Now, they may not know the particulars of those particular people or their job or what they do for us, but it's important to understand that just because someone has identified a sheriff's official, we are never going to ask you to pay any fines or fees or take care of an arrest warrant on the phone.
Right.
We have never done business in that fashion, and we never will. Another red flag is we're never going to ask you to pay that in gift cards. We're never going to ask you to pay online. We're never going to ask you to pay in the form of Bitcoin. There's just a multitude of things that people are asking for that we're never going to ever have you do. At the sheriff's office, if there's anything to do with a fee, a fine, or a potential arrest warrant, that is all services that have to take place in person, never on the phone.
Yeah, that's good advice, because I have heard nightmare stories about people sending $30,000 and more sometimes.
It's
That's
happened,
incredible.
Martin. It's happened. I've investigated it personally before I became a public information officer. And again, these are seemingly educated people that are falling victim to this. So, for someone to think that it's really hard or it should be common sense to not fall victim, it's not always common, right? But it's about going back and thinking logically about things. We've had a scammer that called and said, you have an arrest warrant for attempted murder to someone who has never been in a situation where they have even been accused of this type of behavior. Now, what happens with the predicated fear is that you watch these television shows where people are falsely identified and all of these other things that go on in television. But the reality is that if you've been a part of a case like that, trust me, law enforcement is going to find you and they're going to talk to you. It's not horror stories. It's about being vigilant and being educated when it comes to scammers.
So we certainly appreciate y'all staying on top of that. And I know sometimes it's a little tricky, but the best advice is hang up. Don't get involved in a conversation, because those silver-tongued devils, they'll try to swing you.
They sure will.
Yeah.
They sure will.
All right. Good seeing you, Blake.
You too, Martin. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a short break. We have a lot more. So the rule of thumb, when you get a call from a scammer, just hang the phone up. You can hang it up politely, click. You don't have to slam it down. All right, there you have it. Great advice from our first lieutenant. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.